The world will look back on this last 10 or 12 years as a very insane and isolated psychological contagion, and a psychological mass brainwashing of a group of people. And that's if history is allowed to survive in the form that it was always taught until until a generation of far left liberal professors decided to teach Marxist-based ideologies, which you don't teach how to think, you should teach what to think. They included CRT, which taught them how to be racist, mainly towards white people, how to get onto the intersectional victimhood theory of the Karl Marx writings, and therefore see your oppression mixed among other people who are oppressed. And the goal of that is really to be the most oppressed and victimized group, and then feel that victimization and oppression. It's at this point, it would be foolish to say that this is the exact hallmarks of a Marxist religious cult. James Lindsay writes and talks extensively about this. And there are so many aspects of it that were very, very similar to what went on in the East, and which ended up with 120 to 150 million genocidal deaths. So can the left go too far? Well, of course they can go much too far. Is this woke movement as dangerous? No, because it changed it from class to culture. It used to be, when it was upper class, high, middle class, lower class, it was easier to actually have a revolution because there were people you would strip from the upper class completely. Whereas now it's all based in identity politics and the essence of self, and that you and your feelings are the most important thing. And that being taught to our children, along with CRT, queer theory, gender theory, and transgender story hour, has mixed up their brains because they're not fully formed adult humans. They don't contextualize things properly. That's why they should never have been taught this way. Marxism is the main religion of university graduates, and a staggering thing, Gen Z is less literate, less numerically accurate, and has less knowledge in all of the STEM fields, that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the things that are driving have always driven our progress through the world, and they know nothing about them. And another staggering fact is that only 30% of women get degrees in the STEM fields. That's not that startling, but when I add this fact, it is. Only 20% of men get college or university degrees. So 80% of women are getting the university degrees, and almost all of them are not getting them in the key areas that they're needed for societal development. Robin DiAngelo did some damage with her book on white fragility, which brought in this idea of white supremacy, white privilege, white guilt, white fragility. You know, I could play the game a straight white heterosexual male. I'm right at the bottom of the victimhood triangle. But if I want to, I can play the I'm disabled. Oh, see, you judged a book by its cover. Now I'm right up in the middle of, I'm decently high in the victimhood status if I want to be, but God, do I not? I've had a rough life, and part of that has been because I've refused to be victimized by anything or anybody. You know, and I'm a free-thinking individual, and we have a generation of people who aren't. You can't consider them to be free-thinking individuals. You can say that they have the concept of free thought, but they're generally led by group force, and they're generally acting and surrounding themselves by people who only agree with and think like they do, which is a disaster for your own personal development. Because the only way you get experience in life, and enough experience to get ahead in life, is by getting out and living in life, making your mistakes, falling over, making them again, falling over again, and with each time you build more emotional and wisdom, and so emotional resilience, more wisdom, and you become a more complete person. If you try and shadow yourself from all of the bad things in the world because you feel like a victim, that it is so soul destroying, because it basically eliminates your thoughts that you can go out and do something special on your own and make something in the world. And that doesn't have to be making loads of money. That just could be what you do. You could be an artist and a pianist. Most artists don't make a lot of money for their paintings, but some are good enough that they make a fair whack, and others are earning a decent living in art. You know, most musicians aren't recording artists, but many can make a decent living from it. But people who are thinking of themselves as part of a victimized, oppressed group will be so full of anger and hate. And you've seen it misdirected recently in the what was the Free Palestine protest, which has very quickly become the kill Israelis and, anti-Zionist, pro-Hamas soup of people represented by so many of these Gen Z woke idiots. The bulk of them are middle-class Gen Z woke idiots, whether they're LGBTQI plus or not, or whatever they are, that climate change nutters who think that we need to stop drilling oil when the only way to ever get to a place where renewable energy is possible is by getting oil to use it to make electricity. We're not there yet. We'll need 40 years. Sorry, the world's not going to end in any less than 10,000. So it's all right. And actually, emissions are being on the way down for 10 years. And that's another thing they don't tell you. They don't tell you lots of things, but, the climate problem is nothing like what it is. Watch Michael Schillerberger's Escaping the Woke Matrix. It's a really good video. I'd recommend. But what I'm really trying to say, I'm going to wrap up in a second, but this is going to be such a damaging thing for a culture, a generation. And the damage lies with organizations like the UN, UNESCO, whose job it was to propagate all of this. All of these received donations from Qatar, the UAE, China, Saudi Arabia, and Iran in that order. Qatar is part of the UAE, but it's given so many billions more, it's considered its own entity. And we'll look back and we'll realise that a lot of bad actors have played their part in teaching an entire generation of people how to think and how to feel, and how to feel about themselves. And the disaster of that, the real hardship, is the protesting. Really, when it comes down to it, I've been analysing it every single time, and I'm a psychologist, and my best is this. They say they hate America, they say they hate Europe, they say they hate England, they burn flags. The internal realisation will come when they realise they hate themselves. And that's all it's down to. And why wouldn't they? Because they've been fed this rubbish about them being victimised in some way in history, in which if you play it, it's a zero-sum game. There's not a person alive. His ancestry has not been victimised by history. And they're really going to suffer inside because they've been filled with all this antagonism and hatred that was taught to them to make sure that they stamp their victimhood card on almost everything they do, taking offence to everything anyone says or leaving that option open to them. It's not healthy, and it can't ever happen again. We're lucky it's on its way out, and we need to make sure that we keep it on its way out. We show it the door, because wokeism has done nothing good but lots of bad to a lot of people. So let's just cut our ties with it and let history look back on it as a foolish idea that society entertained. Anyway, that's it from me. Always a pleasure, never a chore. You be lucky this week, I'll be good, and I'll speak to you soon.